Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL. George Morgan here, your commentator, alongside me, TK, who is going to be rounding off the season with me. Down the inside, absolutely possible scene.
This is for the win between these two.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
He needs to get it done now.
Blakey will dive to the inside.
We're robust. We got our elbows out.
Ronar takes the lead.
Because here comes Alfie Butcher.
Can't really complain with that one.
It's not going to be easy. The pressure is on, of course.
Yarda Watmere is your champion.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are in the world. And welcome back to PSGL PCF2 here in Season 43, where we head to round 5 of the season. That's right, tonight we head to the 5th round. We are entering crunch time if you want to get your championship campaign underway. And we head to the Styrian Hills of the Red Bull Ring. My name is Max Ring. I'll be taking you through all the action tonight alongside the familiar face as always, Omi. How are you on this Thursday evening?
Hello, Max. Doing very, very well. And we've got a great round in prospect. As you mentioned, of course, we had a little break. We had a 1-week break. Then we went to Madrid. About half the grid wasn't here. We got F3 drivers to come in and fill in for that. This is kind of the part of the season where there's no excuses now. There's nothing really you can say that's against you. You have to get your season kickstarted now, all the way until round 11, if you want to try and beat Liam Stevens, who has turned from a reserve driver to a full-time driver just because he just, is leading the championship and he's been on the podium in every race so far this season. So we've basically got him locked in when he's free for all the races now for the remaining rounds of this campaign.
We certainly do indeed. After the stellar performances he's been putting in, he has got the full-time seat with, I believe, yes, it's Gabriel Quintino, who has dropped down to reserve, and he's actually racing tonight, even though he has made that drop down. But let's quickly, before we head trackside, drivers are just going to start some outlaps now. Quickly run you through the top 10 at the very least of the standings. As we know, it's Liam Stevens on top, first, third. Are we going to see that continued here tonight with a race win this evening? It's Seechuk in second, Hietala, who wasn't here in Spain, in third. Then it's Laurie Torquay, Conrad Bone, Vermont, Preskin, Gabadi, Kokeni, Flack, Thorero, Styler. And then you have the likes of Alves, Vasso, Roberts, Jacobs, Cloud, Tomasetto, Santana and Rowson rounding out those points scorers. But let's now head track side. But Omi, Stevens, a 21-point lead. A huge margin for the rest of the field to cut down. Of course, only 16 points for a race victory. So he's got a race win and then some in terms of the championship tally. So he's got a big margin to the rest of the field behind.
It's that points gap, basically, which you get to the end of a campaign of, and you basically go like, oh, well, all the other tiers have a great championship fight, and look at us. We are not even within 16 points. It's not going down to the final race. And that's basically what we do. We do that at the end of the season. We are basically 4 rounds in to the campaign, and that is already basically what we're having to say with Liam Stevens, who is dominating. But we have seen previously in F2 that the points difference can change very quickly, and one off round for a driver can easily turn the championship over. So we'll keep an eye and see how Stevens gets on. And around this circuit, we've had an F3 race that has just been going on. You're seeing the opening lap times coming now. We've had an F3 race that is still ongoing around Austria for PSGL. Lots of chaos, lots of side-by-side battling, and it's how Austria's always been. Now we've got a battery element and they're all pushing on.
Yeah, they certainly are indeed. It's Thorero who is currently occupying that top spot after the first 8 runners have set lap times. We saw Casper Flack had a big moment on the middle sector split, just coming out of turn 6, as we now see Gabriel Quintino make his way through the final couple of corners. Of course, has just dropped down to reserve, but let's see what he can do as he comes across the line. 9th fastest for him. Abe Gabadi to 3rd. And we're still just waiting to see if anyone can topple Alejandro Loureiro's top time so far. Tulki, last time out's race winner, to 4th. Kokeni to 5th. We're now looking at last week's pole sitter, Dirk Vermond, as he comes to the line. It's second fastest for him. So carrying on that strong qualifying performance. And of course, we were brutally denied an opportunity at a race victory fight, last time out. And Sergio Sobrino is not going for a lap just yet. Tomasetto just coming through the Swashgold, and Jacobs making his way up into turn 3. So let's now see what Elia Tomasetto can do in the Audi. But Vermond and Tulki so far here tonight, Omi, carrying on after these first runs. Some strong form they've picked up since that little break we had.
Absolutely, Vermond, our pole sitter, of course, at Madrid. We asked the question and we basically mentioned to you about, was it just the case if he was able to dial it in at Madrid? Lots of F3 contenders in the field during that day, but it very much could have given him a big confidence boost. As Fanzelter goes to 2nd, Loureiro still top, but it very much would have given him a confidence boost. And he's going to now be carrying that for the remaining parts of this season. He returned off our one big break in absolute style. Jacobs goes to 2nd place. So it's Loureiro, then Jacobs, then Fanzelter, and then Vermond. Then we find ourselves with the king of F2 qualifying in Tony Hietala. So many times has been a pole sitter at this level. He's already making his way back out on the circuit as Sergio Sobrino goes to 3rd. We're already at the territory where the margins are so close. 1 minute 3.5s all the way down from 1st to 6th.
It is ridiculously fine margins already in this session. We knew it would be close with it being only a 1 minute free lap time. But this is a whole nother level. 0.2 of a second separate 1st to 13th, all the way down to Nelson Alvarez. And then there's only a couple hundredths more as you head down to Rowson, Statulet, Quintino and Dowds. So it is really fine margins at the moment. And if you're Liam Stephens, who's down in 11th, of course, championship leader, you are currently staring at a 1/10.5 needed to then go to the very top yourself. So it is really, really close margins for these drivers. Tony Hietala will be one of the first to get us underway for this next set of runs. Should be able to get 4 runs done in this session, you would think, with such a short lap, short in, short out and short push lap. You should be able to do the 4 attempts. A little bit wide from that first corner apex, a slide as well, so this might be a down in the first sector by Tony Hietala. No improvement in the first part of the lap, but he does still find a way to improve, so I've been shown where to put my words there. And then of course out of the turn 3, straight line mode activated and down into the Swashgold. Of course, being such a short lap, battery management isn't really needed. And then through into 5. Of course, this just leads up into 6th. It will be down the gears we go, down to 5th gear, and then into the middle sector split. He's up by 0.03 of a second. This at the moment will promote him up into that top 3, just about keeps things valid out of turn 8. And then down through turn 9, runs wide all the way over the apex curb, and unfortunately for Hietala, off the road and invalidates the lap. But that was shaping up to at least put him on the 2nd row.
Reigning champion then, finding the limits, trying to join Angelo Di Ortensio as a 2-time champion. He's the only driver who's done that in the past, and he's in the live chat with us right now. Alejandro Loureiro then, a contender when it came to Abu Dhabi last season, and definitely a driver who has made a name for himself when it comes to PCF2 time and time again, and right now he is heading the field in what will absolutely be, by the end of it, one of the most competitive F2 qualifying sessions of the season. We are through the final corner on the circuit, and now it is time to get some times on the board. Pressacan to 3rd. Loureiro improves his time, and it's a 1 minute 3.432 for the rest of the drivers to beat. Rosen is going to be in 16th. Liam Stephens starts an effort now in towards turn number 1. Jacobs is on an outlap at this moment. So is Sergio Sobrino. So is Florian Fanzelter. So we've had the improvement coming for Loureiro, and lots of his near contenders are beginning laps around the Red Bull Ring.
They certainly are indeed, as we see one of the Aston Martins coming through the final corner. So of course, Jacobs just getting ready to start a lap. Vermont is on an outlap as well. Laurie Talkie makes it an Alpine 1-2. Of course, was on the front row last time out in the Madring as well. But of course, starting second place there, was able to pick up the race victory. Jacobs through the first sector, up by half a tenth of a second, so he could still have a strong shot at this midpoint of the session to break his way into the front row. Of course, some drivers have just started the lap, some drivers coming near the end of theirs. Casper Flack will be next to the line, I believe he was, and he goes to 11th fastest. I think Jacobs is going to be the next to finish a lap, but no, runs wide through turn 6, and he was up by a tenth of a second. That could have easily put him in contention for that provisional pole position. But we'll just have to wait and see what he can deliver a little bit later on. Vermont, unfortunately, has picked up an invalidation. He's only 1,000th behind this man, Sergio Sabrino, who just backed off and got ready to go again. What about Alex Santana? Where is he on the road? He's aborted as well. So plenty of mistakes coming in that second part of this session here, Omi. A lot of drivers finding their feet, a lot of drivers finding the limits. And that shows for what's to come for the rest of this session. They've had their warnings, but now they've got to try and maybe tidy things up and get things back on track.
Absolutely. We are in a session where it's going to come down to thousandths of a second. So that's what the drivers are trying to do. They're trying to extract that extra thousandth wherever they can. However, it can lead to your lap time completely being gone. Whether that's you invalidated by going beyond the white lines, whether you have a moment where you find yourself off in the gravel. There is big consequence either side. However, if you nail it, you're probably looking at the quickest time and at the fastest time. Alpine no longer have a 1-2. The reason why Sergio Sabrino has joined Loureiro with a 1 minute 3.4 in this session. He's currently on the front row is Sergio Sabrino, and a driver who has only participated in 2 rounds so far. 13th and 16th are his qualifying results. This is Dirk Vermont. When it comes to qualifying results, it wasn't looking promising for him until he took pole. I mean, he's not going to be improving from 8th right now because another driver to run slightly wide.
Yeah, unfortunately there for Vermont to just run wide. You saw the front end did not want to grip up at all. It just completely washed out underneath him as Alex Santana sits a 1 minute 3.621, an identical lap time to Elia Tomasetto, who's invalidated his next attempt. So many drivers out of sync with one another as we see Conrad Bohm move himself up into third fastest, only 200th shy of teammate Sabrino. Of course, Bohm has certainly been one to watch so far this season. Could he be looking at another race victory here in PCF2? Of course, hasn't picked one up so far this season, came agonisingly close in Belgium. But we'll just have to see if he can pick one up at a later point. Maybe here tonight is when he picks that first one up on the board. There was a little bit of a mistake there from Tudor Preskin through the Swash Gold and then into 6th. What are we looking like in the middle sector? He was identical in the first. He's found 600ths in the middle part of the lap. He's currently on a 3.546. So this will certainly boost him up into that top 4 at the very least. Through the final couple of corners we go now, but takes too much of the final corner, and he unfortunately picks up an invalidation, and it would have been enough for the second row. What about Alejandro Herrero? He's up by 300ths in the middle part of the lap. Dirk Vermont went again, and he's now gone to 4th fastest, a 1 minute 3.502, and Herrero finding another half a tenth on his previous best. This certainly will be a statement lap to try and take provisional pole into his hands.
Yeah, he is going quicker and quicker. When you get other contenders who start setting lap times, the issue is Loureiro sets an even faster one. 1 minute 33.375. Your new lap time to beat with 5 minutes to go. The championship leader gets close, but he can't get by, and he goes into second as Liam Stevens. A needed lap to at least put himself in contention, but it is Loureiro leading Stevens. We have had Sabrino and Bohm, the Red Bulls, who've come into the pit lane. Some other drivers still pushing on. We're on board with Cameron Dowds, or we were. He's got out of it, and there's multiple drivers backing off because now what they're going to start beginning to do is, if these lap times weren't working, they're going to focus now on one final run at the end of this session.
They certainly are indeed. It will all boil down to this final lap that is going to be brewing for these drivers. It is fine margins here in PCF2. You can see Loureiro on a 1 minute 3.375. Down to Tamas Kokeni, it is just over 0.3 of a second. At any other qualifying this season, 0.3 of a second could separate 1st to 10th, 1st to 15th. But no, here it's 1st to 21st. There are so many drivers that can find the time. All it needs is to hook up that lap when you need it. You can find that 3/4 of a second to put yourself at the very top. The track evolution and the confidence is what you need around a circuit like the Red Bull Ring. You need to have trust in your car to pull off those laps. And that is exactly what Alejandro Loureiro and Liam Stevens have got right now. They have a 10th advantage over the rest of the field, but that can easily be taken away. An invalidation for one of them. Somebody pulling a lap of all laps out of the bag to put themselves to the top of the pile, and that could derail all the momentum that these drivers have. It is all down to these final runs, and at a circuit like Austria, qualifying may not be crucial because it's easy to overtake, but it is still a great place to take pole position because you get to dictate the tempo.
Yeah, you do. And you get a bonus point, which, well, in a tier like F2, championship standings can come down to a single point. I mean, that's what Luke Smith won it by when it came to season 30. So every single point matters, and the pole position point can be so vital and so important. And especially if you're someone like Tony Hietala who just likes racking them up so much across F2 campaigns, it can very much go a long way. As we see Pressakan then building and preparing, and we are about to get flying laps around the Red Bull Ring. It is going to be a shootout at the end to see who is going to take pole position, and this is going to be very much in the balance for nearly every single driver in the field. So, round the final corner goes Pressakan, gets his foot down, and then gets ready for the climb up to Niki Lauda curve, which is turn number 1.
Here we go then, with the McLaren driver on what will be his final attempt at the session. Absolutely on the limit of traction out of the Niki Lauda curve and making his way up through turn 2. Of course, there's a little kink left and into 3. He's actually backed off this lap. He has time to do that. He has time in hand, and he will think about going again. What about Alejandro Loureiro? He's just starting his attempt now as he makes his way through the first corner. His teammate Lari Tulki is a little bit further around on the road. He's just a little bit further up the straight. He's down by 0.5 tenth in the first part of the lap. It seems like a lot of these drivers have aborted at the start of these final flying laps, but if you're coming across the line now, you will not have enough time to go again. So for Lari Tulki, down into the Swash Gold, he's got an Aston Martin in front of him. That will be not of Tony Hietala, that will be his teammate, of course, of Rishan Jacobs. So now through turn 6 for Tulki. Is he finding any time at all? He is. He's now 0.5 tenth to the good, so he's found a 10th in that middle sector alone. What about Alejandro Loureiro? We just can't see what lap time he is pulling off at the moment, but as we make our way through the final couple of corners, Gabani puts himself into third. Tulki, can he snatch anything away from his teammate as he comes across the line? No, 4th fastest for him. Loureiro is up by 0.5 tenth. He finds 600ths more on his previous best. He snatches that provisional pole straight into his grasp, and he has thrown down the gauntlet once more. Liam Stevens has invalidated. Sergio Sabrino goes into 4th. Alves to 6th. We've got Tony Hietala, I think, who is just setting up for another attempt. A lot of these drivers making the mistakes, and they've been crucially saved by the fact there's still another 20 seconds to go in the session.
Yep, so some of them are going to be pushing on now at this moment. So this is where they begin to go on the attack. Now we check in with Pressakan. We saw him abandoning earlier on. Now in 12th, now needs to improve because he's seen some of the other drivers do exactly that. The checkered flag is flying. Casper Flack is going to be starting best in 11th. Pressakan has something to say about it. Goes up to 4th in the McLaren. So Pressakan now finding the time. Robert has backed out of it. He's got an outbeat ahead. They're both basically done in this session. And we look over to Liam Stevens. Look at this. He's up by 9,000ths of a second when it comes to sector number 1. And in sector 2, this is where he needs to go to work. Rishan Jacobs, though, is finding some time. The driver currently in 13th. Oh, he gets to second, but he can't quite get there. He was chasing a first ever F2 pole, and he was chasing a first pole position in PSGL since F3 season 33, round 9 Hungary. But the wait is going to go on just a little bit more. Tony Hietala needs a big improvement. Over the line he goes, he gets to 10. Liam Stevens for pole. He gets to the front row, but he can't beat Alejandro Lerrero, who might have just secured that 1 point that he'll get for pole position. And that is a great lap time for him, as the rest of them set a time. Elliot Tomasetto to 5th.
What an end to qualifying that was there. Rishan Jacobs with a huge improvement, but just was not able to take things away from the Lerrero. Same for Liam Stevens as well. And the fine margins did well and truly continue. But Alejandro Lerrero, he pulled out the lap when he needed to. When the pressure was on him most to put down a bit more of a gap to the rest of the field, he did deliver. And he takes pole position here this evening in the Red Bull Ring, and also a very good qualifying session from the championship leader as well, Liam Stevens in seconds. 300ths was the gap between the top 2. 400ths was the gap between the top 3. Lerrero, Stevens and Jacobs occupy the first 3 places on the grid. Then it's Gabadi, Elliot Tomasetto, who is still under a 10th from Lerrero, and then Preskin in 6th. A 10th of a second separates 6 cars. Then it's Bohm, Sabrino, Patton, Tulki rounding out the top 10. Alves Hietala will be disappointed with 12th. Quintino, Vermont, Stachilek, Ralston, Flack, Santana, Roberts, Dowd, and then the 2 Cadillacs of Van Selter and Kenny. But Vermont will be very disappointed with that after the confidence he showed in the early parts of the session. Same with Lari Tulkiomi, but most crucially, Stachilek and also Tony Hietala, the 2 closest rivals to Liam Stevens, and he's outqualified the pair of them.
Liam Stevens has always been a big contender. Hasn't left with a championship. This season is his best chance. And that is absolutely remarkable stuff. Pole number 2 for Alejandro Lerrero. Makes start number 8 today in the championship. Has been in the top 5 4 times. That's the same amount of times he's been in the top 10 as well. And he is, well, he's not had a retirement yet when it comes to F2, so I'm sure he'll want to keep it that way as well. He'll be leading us on the run towards turn number 1. Should be a very fascinating opening lap.
It certainly should be indeed here, Omi. Of course, a very short run to that first corner. You haven't got much time to build up the speed, so you need a good initial launch off the line to try and overtake your rivals. And of course, this circuit can provide a lot of action, a lot of overtaking opportunities into turns 1, 3, 4, even potentially we could see some lunges through turn 6 and then into turn 7 as well. And of course, on the strategy front, looking at that 2-stop, I believe, but it is going to be the Alpine and the V-Carb on the front row. It's Lerrero and Stevens as we have 5 red lights and we're underway here in Austria. It's a great start from Alejandro Lerrero, who's just able to cover off Liam Stevens on that run to turn 1. Jacobs and also Gabadi slot into 3rd and 4th places, but it's now going to be about the exit out of the Niki Lauda curve. Here comes Stevens as he's already trying to go for an attack around the outside as we head up into 3 onto Alejandro Lerrero, who brakes later. He'll go deeper into the corner, but Stevens under attack from Rishan Jacobs. He's not able to get the move done, but they're going to run side by side all the way down into the Swash Gold. The Aston Martin will be on the inside, trying to take the position away from the championship leader. Of course, Stevens can't do anything too risky here. He's got to think about his own championship battle and just keeping his car intact. It's a long race ahead, 36 laps here at the Red Bull Ring. Around the outside will go the Aston Martin. He'll try hold it once more through 7, and he does hold it once more. He's up into 2nd place. Stevens down to 3rd. Gabadi under pressure from Elliot Tomasetto behind. Conrad Bohm's dropped down the order, and he's been overtaken now by Tony Hietala. As that's Tomasetto into the back of Gabadi, and the V-Carb sent into a half slide. He's somehow kept the car facing in the right direction, and everyone's avoided him, and he's only dropped down to 7th place. But a great start from Alejandro Lerrero to hold on to that race lead. But here comes the overtake mode, and we should see places constantly changing as Gabadi straight back up into 6th.
It was a terrible launch off the line for Tador Presekan. Went absolutely nowhere. It's kind of like he stalled momentarily when he left the line. So he's basically dropped all the way to the back of the field. Right, that was very lucky for Gobadi for it to not end worse after getting tagged through those final few turns. He's right now in a drag race where Nelson Alves getting close for comfort. Racing Bulls versus Williams down towards the 4th turn of the circuit. And it is going to be Gobadi with the inside line down towards turn number 6. They've gone through the kink of turn 5. This is the consequential corner of turn 6, and they're getting very close together, and off the road goes Nelson Alves, and this chaotic opening lap continues as the Williams now begins to lose places.
Certainly does indeed. It was the slightest bit of contact between the pair which sent Alves off onto the marbles, and then the car just washed wide and he drops down to 13th place with a lot of work now to do to bring himself back up into contention. That means Sergio Sobrino is now behind Abe Gobadi and is all over the gearbox of the V-Carb. The two sister teams will now go to battle as they will make their way up into turn 3. Gobadi deciding to derate, deciding to turn that battery off, and that's given the opportunity for Sobrino to go right down the inside and take that position away from Gobadi, who's really been ruffled. He's really been beaten so far in the opening 2.5 laps here in Spielberg. Peter Stechilek is just behind Dirk Vermont. He's going to look for a move onto Vermont. Is the Audi driver. Of course, Stechilek is a reserve, so that's why he changes car every week, and it's a good exit out of the Swash Gold for the Audi. He's going to try hold it around the outside, just like we saw Jacobs do on Liam Stevens on the opening lap, but this time around it is going to be Dirk Vermont who just has his car a little bit further ahead, and Stechilek has to stay in that 12th place. Frantic opening lap so far, and it's still Alejandro Loureiro who somehow leads this race from Jacobs. I think the front runners are now thinking about getting into that rhythm and just seeing how far they can go.
It very much seems like wherever you turn the camera, Max, we're getting some overtaking, we're getting some battling. Here we go, Tony Yatala and Lari Tulki. Lari Tulki has left the session, and that is a big shame for him. We've seen it happen numerous times to Abe Gobadi, the driver who was just directly up the road, and that is very much going to affect Lari Tulki. Oh, chaos in the background there. Stauchilek is going to find himself out of the race, and they go down to the braking zone of turn 3. Carbon fiber was flying absolutely everywhere, and will continue on in this race. Remember, there is no safety cars as well. It's turned off due to a glitch. Oh, more contact down into the braking zone. Casper Flack is going to go round. It's absolute chaos. The drivers are sending it in the mid-pack. They are throwing caution to the wind at this stage.
They certainly are indeed. I don't know if this is just them getting caught out under braking by everyone congesting behind Lari Tulki's AR, or just congesting in general with, of course, the battery management in play. I want to know what happened to Stachilek, because it seems he just went off the road at turn 2. It could have been a wheel failure. It could have potentially been a bit of contact that sent him onto the gravel. Nothing he could do, and into the wall. As we see Tamas Kokeni now get past Lari Tulki's AI, as Tulki is now slowly rejoining the session, but he's all the way down at the bottom of the field. And Alex Santana has now left the session. Lari Tulki has as well, as we now see Alejandro Loureiro make his way out of turn 3. But that's another disconnect there, this time for Alex Santana. And look at it all congesting up into turn 3 with the two AIs.
Well, here we go. Welcome back to Madrid, everyone. We're at Austria. However, this time around, a bit more space to play with. But if we're going on to grass, it's very much going to lead to chaos. Lari Tulki's back in the session, and we're still getting very close for comfort as they make their way through turn number 5. I wonder whether they'll be considering a lobby restart if, well, we're desyncing here, because at the moment it seems, even by F2 standards, to be something that is not of the norm.
Certainly is indeed. And we thought the AI chaos was over. That might have to be a new subplot of the season, is the AI drama that it, of course, does cause. And for Lari Tulki and Alex Santana, they're now at the back of the field, but with Santana having that disconnect, that can potentially lead to some issues inside of the lobby. But we'll have to wait and see what the call is on that one. We are still going for now, though, as here comes Tony Hitala to the inside of Abe Gobadi. It's a late lunge, barges into the sides of the V-Carb as they will now drag out of turn 3 and down the hill. Of course, Tony Hitala needs a big race here for his championship. yes, there's still plenty of time to go in the season, but he can't let Stevens get too far clear, and he does get past Dave Gabaddi down the inside into turn 4, and the V-Carb has to seek another position in this race. He really is struggling to hold on to places. Here's Dave Gabaddi, and he is just dropping like a stone. But for Hietala here, Omi, he needs these good results. Same with Stachulek, but of course he's retired from the race now. But for Petur Stachulek, that's some big points in the championship that could be lost. Hietala is now the only hope to really keep this gap to Liam Stevens underneath 30 points coming out of round 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, we've got drivers back in. Let's try continue. Lap 7 out of 36. It is PCF2 here around the Red Bull Ring, our 5th contest of the season, where you've basically got to kickstart your championship challenge. One man who's, well, at the charge in terms of the championship, Liam Stevens, finding himself with Elliot Tomasetto behind, Rishan Jacobs ahead, and it's Alejandro Loureiro leading the way as things stand at the moment in time, down towards turn number 4. The top drivers have all gone into calm mode. They're basically thinking about the long game. If you're anywhere else, basically, it's you're trying to send it. We're getting 3 wide moments, we're getting 4 wide moments, and we're getting a lot of collisions and a lot of carbon fiber flying, as I've already mentioned at the moment. So that's what's going on basically outside of these current drivers. So you've got a top 8 train right now that's beginning to form. There is going to be some drivers possibly at the tail end of that who look for some overtakes. Sergio Sabrino's closing in on Lorenz Patton, who's doing the same to Elliot Tomasetto. So it's getting a little bit interesting. But at the front of the field, it's very much thinking about the long picture.
Yes, certainly is indeed. You've got to look at the long game, see what you can do later on in the race. It's not about now, it's about building yourself for lap 30 to 36, that last little burst, that sprint to the finish. It's all about management until that phase. Tudor Preskin is able to get past onto Florian Van Selter as they made their way up into turn 3. Of course, this train has now somewhat been disconnected thanks to the AIs. Nelson Alves is now 1.7 seconds behind Ave Gabaddi as well. So we have 3 trains here, really, at this stage of the race. Tudor Preskin leading one, Alves leading another, and of course, race leader Alejandro Loureiro leading the front pack as we now make our way through the middle sector on board with the McLaren. And for, of course, Tudor Preskin, it was a good qualifying from him. Made his way, of course, into that top 10, as you said, Omi. Bogged down at the start, and that's just completely hampered any chance of him picking up a strong performance as Van Selter picks up our first 3-second time penalty of the evening. But for Tudor Preskin, it's going to be a story of what could have been already here in this race on lap 9 of 36 because he's so far off the front train.
Vermont then up to 9th. Bohm up to 10th as well. And he's going to send it up the inside and turn that into 9th. So, lots of passing, and it can be pass or be passed very much in PCF2. But yeah, completely agree with you on Pressacan. It's very weird. It's very weird that you do get something like that, where a driver basically doesn't move. It's something you'd expect in real life racing as well, as we still go side by side in this battle. Rosen versus Vermont, who's got the inside line. Rosen just trying to brave it out the long way round, backing out and tucking back in. Thomas Kokeni's also there. Nelson Alves is also waiting for his chance, and the last thing that you want to do at this stage is get your nose in and rip off a front wing and possibly risk ruining your full race. Remember, there won't be any safety cars like we've had in previous years around Austria that can change things up and that can bring you back in contention.
No, there is not indeed, as Cameron Dowds comes into the pit lane and he gets a 10-second time penalty for speeding, and that is our second retirement of the race. Talking about coming into the pit lane, let's have a look at the tyres everybody is on. Everybody is on the mediums except for Tom Roberts and Alex Santana. So everyone's going to be looking at somewhat a similar strategy. I think the only way to get back into this race will be some undercuts. As here comes Kokeni now getting past Nelson Alves, who in the past lap and a half or so has been absolutely swamped by the train of cars behind him. And he's now going to be overtaken by the Cadillac, you would think. But he goes for the up and under through the swash goal. And he gets a really nice drive out of the corner. But it's just not good enough to pull alongside the Cadillac. And Kokeni, from last on the grid, now up into P12. 10 places gained for Kokeni, who is our biggest gainer and biggest losers so far in this race. Biggest gainer is going to be Kokeni, up 10. Fanselter as well, his teammate, is up 7. Hietala is up 5. And now we also see Kokeni come into the pit lanes. So trying something different, maybe going on to a set of the hards. And we'll see what he can deliver on the undercut now. Kokeni got to be the man to watch for everybody throughout this field.
Absolutely. So that's going to be very much the interesting factor to look at strategy-wise, while the rest of them continue to trundle their way around this Red Bull Ring circuit. And this is traditionally one of your last overtaking opportunities come the final lap. We have, however, in the past had pure chaos in Sector 3, cars spinning absolutely everywhere on the final lap between the leaders, and someone out of thin air emerging to win. We've had some great racing around this circuit. Season 37 very much comes to mind in terms of that, and Austria is just one of those venues where you always go there expecting something. And F2 usually very much varies what it throws up. It seems like right now at the moment AI cars and AI chaos is very much at the top of the list. But in terms of the racing, in terms of the side-by-side, that is going to be very fascinating. Of course, with these regulations as well that we do have. Sergio Sabrina then gets a good exit out of turn number 1. And he's going to be trying to chase down Lorenz Patton if there's, of course, an easy chance to make the move. If not, you don't want to risk it, like we've said all broadcast long so far.
You don't want to risk too much at all at this stage, because if you get into a big battle, like we're seeing with this mid-pack, as Fanselter's now to get his way past Tudor Prescott, and you can just see yourself tanking time, because to think, at one stage between Gabadi and Nelson Alves, that gap between 8th and 9th, which is now Conrad Bohm, it was about 1.5 seconds. It's now 3.5 seconds. So if you get into these squabbles, these little mini debates within your train, you hemorrhage time, and you constantly keep losing that then as the session progresses, because the cars in front have the slipstream, they have the overtake mode, and they're just going to keep pulling further and further and further clear. And I think that's another reason why we're not seeing these drivers at the front of the field go for these battles, have these small little fights amongst themselves, and are just happy to sit, as we're on board with here, Sabrino, in that 6th place spot, because he's still in that front train. He still can see the Rero, as Fanselter is now retired from the session as well. Unfortunately, that's our 3rd retirement of the evening. Of course, Dowd and Fanselter in the pit lane, and Stachulek on the road. But these drivers are able to stay in contention with the front runners, and are happy to do so as long as it means they're within undercut range, and even at the end of the race within range to make their way further up the field and have some late attacks.
You want to be there because there can easily be chaos directly in front of you, and you can always try and capitalize on it. So that's going to be the long-term aim for lots of these drivers who are in this train. If you are at the front of the field, if you're 9 downwards, you want to make sure and you want to try and make progress as much as you can, as the McLarens momentarily went side by side, and Pressacan fighting his way by turn 6. Quintino backing out of that one. We have seen a little switch because Tony Hietala's come in towards the pit lane, so now he bolts from our leading train.
First driver from that lead train to now come into the pits. So this is a big moment in this race. The undercut strategy onto a set of the hard compound of tyres. We'll get back onto the circuit and go again. Tamas Kokeni is now making his way up into turn 1. And of course, he was around about 4 seconds behind on that train, because he was the one squabbling with the likes of Conrad Bowman, Jensen Ralston, and he's come out right on the gearbox of Tony Hietala. So it shows how strong this undercut is. How many cars are we going to see react now to Tony Hietala on this lap? Who's going to come into the pit lane and when? None of those front runners inside of that top 7, I believe, except from actually Ave Gabadi, are going to be really hindered here about the double stack. So it's only going to be Gabadi who may have to stay out another lap. But let's have a look. The Rero's in. Jacobs is in. Stevens stays out for another tour. We see that from him a lot, though, that he stays out a little while longer. So Stevens, the only one from that front train to stay out on the road, along with Sergio Sabrino. So the two sister teams staying out. And there's a front wing flying off in the pit lane. Is that for Rishan Jacobs? Has he gone into the back of the Rero? He has!
Wow, big drama. Rishan Jacobs then. Well, it's going to have that front wing damage now throughout this race. And that is the worst possible way that you can see a bit of your car go. And well, he had a great opportunity, because he's always great around this circuit. And now take a look at this. This was your lead driver. Welcome to the net race lead, Tony Hitala. Up goes Tamas Kokeni, but for how much longer? Because Larera now flicks it down the inside line, and he is going to be fighting his way by straight away, utilizing the battery and making that maneuver. And Larera is going to try and bolt, and you want to make sure you're ahead of him because of course of the few lap pressure tyres that he has. Conrad Bohm was dropping down our order a few moments ago, so surely he's had a bit of a tangle or a bit of a mistake, or something has gone on for him as well. And there you go, you can see that he's recovering. And well, from the state of his tyres, he surely had an excursion, maybe a bit of side-by-side through turn 6, and that led to him basically spending a lot of time in the gravel.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened there. There was some squabbling between himself, Nelson Alves, and Dirk Vermont. I think there was a bit of contact. As Nelson Alves picks up 10 seconds and he now retires from this race. That's our 4th retirement now, thanks to speeding in the pit lane penalties. But Tony Hitala putting off a brilliant strategy there. Liam Stevens has stayed up for another tool. That's a big tank slapper for Rishan Jacobs, and that could now put him under some pressure from Tamas Kokeni behind, who of course is still within these top front runners and is looking. It's here comes to the inside, Elliot Tomasetto. The Rero was able to get past Tony Hitala while all this was going on as well, so he reclaims that net race lead. And here comes Elliot Tomasetto to maybe not get past 1 but 2 heading into turn 4. Of course, he got the move done on Kokeni through 3, was able to set himself up nicely against Rishan Jacobs for the run down to 4, but he's just not there through 5 and 6 to get the opportunity to attack the Aston Martin. But Tony Hitala as well being overtaken by Alejandro Lerrero is also crucial for this one, because he was leading this strain, but he's now into 2nd. Where does Liam Stevens come out into this one? And is he going for a potential one-stop strategy? But I would think as well, these drivers that have already boxed are already on that one-stop strategy.
Stevens going longer in this one then. We're getting up towards half race distance for F2 around the Red Bull Ring. And we've already had plenty of chaos and plenty of entertainment so far. And I think it very much could be about to continue. Some of the gaps getting very close. Lorenz Patton, I think, is looking for a possible maneuver, and here we go. So Patton ahead of Kokeni. Abe Gabadi's going to have a great opportunity as well to try and make a charge down the straight if he is able to. They all get very close together, and then we get the lunge down the inside, and there we go. So Kokeni makes contact with Patton, and that is going to brilliantly open the door for Abe Gabadi to go the long way round down towards turn 6. Is he going to sail the long way through? He'll have to back out of this stage, but all 3 cars still running after that hairy moment.
Yeah, very close to disaster there for all 3, and once again Abe Gabadi nearly in the spot above her once more, but Liam Stevens now into the pit lane along with Jensen Rouse, and of course Roberts was along with Alex Santana the only 2 drivers to start on the hards. As now we see Liam Stevens trundle out of the pit lane, but how far back is he going to be? Because he's only got a 3 to 4 lap tyre advantage. He's going to come out behind Sabrino in 11th, I would say, by around about 1.2, 1.3 seconds. Yes, 1.3 is that gap, as Abe Gabadi is now looking to attack Lorenz Patton, you would think, as he looks to the inside. And will he get this move done? No, he will not. And just in front, Tony Hitala able to get past Alex Santana. Lerrero was able to do the same, and as he's now going to get past Casper Flack, Hitala will want to try and follow him through on the exit of 4, and that's a lovely executed move there from Tony Hitala. That's brilliantly done. Great traffic management from the Aston Martin, of course the reigning champion. And he was able to just follow and slingshot by the Haas driver as the Alpine forced him wide.
Yeah, and now we're getting a bit of a traffic problem in the background because Santana is much more slower, and it means that cars are having to spear absolutely everywhere. Well, he's going to be getting ready to make a pit stop, but they were all held through those final few turns, which is why the gap now is 9/10 of a second as they go over the line and make their way down towards turn 1. So we're going to see Elliot Tomasetto get past Santana. It was Casper Flack who came in towards the pit lane at the moment in time. I can confirm it was Conrad Bohm and Nelson Alves who did have the tangle like we suspected at turn number 6. There was a collision between those two drivers. Conrad Bohm saying that he missed his braking point, which caused that a few moments ago. And the yellow flags are flying once again, and Gobadi dropping down the order. This man continues to get the bad luck this season, and it continues from his F3 season, which had a lot of it as well.
It certainly does indeed. I believe there may have been a tangle there with Tamas Kokeni, because he's also dropped quite a way down throughout the field as well. And it is just more doom and gloom on Gobadi's season. He has been one of the stars to come out of F3. Has arguably been the best driver to come out of F3 so far this season. And he's just not had the luck to back it up. It's mainly been disconnects that have not been his fault. But today it's just been absolute torture for the V-Carb driver. But he is still soldiering on and pushing on to try and see what he can do. Or as he's now into the pit lane. And we could see a retirement come the way of Abe Gobadi, and yes it is. That's our next car down. Of course, Alves and Bowen retired not too long ago, and that means we are now down to a total of 6 retirements in this one, because Gobadi picks up a bit of front wing damage. But as we look back at this front train, it goes all the way down to 9th of Liam Stevens. Alex Santana is just in his way, but he's going to look for the move around the outside of the Swash Gold, and he will be able to pick this one off quite nicely, and he is now up into 8th place. Somebody, well, 2 drivers I would say, who are having really disappointing evenings, especially after last week. Laurie Tilke and Dirk Vermont, as Laurie Tilke now runs side by side with Prescott as they're barging down into turn 6. They're proper wheel banging there, and Laurie Tilke comes out on top. But he had a decent qualifying, did Tilke. He has dropped backwards throughout this race. It's just not been a great evening for the pair of them, as Santana's finally into the pit lane.
Is indeed through turn number 1. Tony Hietala held up slightly there by Tom Roberts. It's where you catch the cars. Lorera was able to make the move easily. Hietala then had to sit in behind with no chance, and then finally got through. Luckily he's got these 3 straights to just regain it, but that's what Austria offers and allows you basically. It very much brings you back within range. But Lorera has had the outright pace today, does have also the 1 lap pressure tyres compared to Tony Hietala. It very much has seemed like Lorera's day as a whole, constantly setting the lap times in qualifying. I mean, it should have been the widest open qualifying, but he constantly got himself just that little quicker than others, and he's constantly been running at the front of the field. Lost the lead during the pit stop cycle, gained it back basically immediately. And it has been a great performance so far, but still needs to bring it over the line, does Alejandro Lorera, and we'll keep an eye whether he can do exactly that. Right, Jacobs has been getting held up by Tom Roberts as well through those final few turns, and he's now going to try and make a bit of an easy pass down the next straight.
Yes, he certainly is going to try and do so. Of course, we have the superior traction. Prescon's into the pit lane. That's another retirement. That brings our total up to 7. And here comes Reshan Jacobs. And also Elliot Tomasetto has a huge amount of overspeed on the pair of them. He's been able to get past Tom Roberts, put himself alongside Reshan Jacobs out of 3 again. But this time, once more, not able to fight his way through. But he had a slingshot up into turn 3 to the Audi driver. It was like he was in a whole nother gear. He found a 9th gear in that car, but just was not able to get the move to stick, as now Tom Roberts falls further down the order. That's Sergio Sabrino now by the Ferrari. Liam Stevens going to look to the inside now through turn number 7, and he's got through ever so easily. So he's now up into P7 with a total of, once we cross the line, there'll be 14 laps remaining. But crucially here as well, of course, Omi, Rishan Jacobs, thanks to being held up there by Tom Roberts, 2 seconds behind the top 2.
Absolutely. A 4th career retirement in F2 for Tador Presakan as he exits this race, and that was Liam Stevens running into the back of Sergio Sabrino, definitely giving him the little push. Right, Elliot Tomasetto trying to go through. He's trying to improve a position. Sergio Sabrino trying to turn the defense to the attack with the inside line. And he's now going to stand on the power. Great chance here for Livingstone to try and get his foot flat to the floor and go wheel to wheel still with the Red Bull. And then you've got Lorenz Patton who's there as well. Is the door going to open? On the outside line, you can see just ahead, Jacobs and Tomasetto battling it out. But Liam Stevens is going to fight his way through. 3 wide, down towards turn number 6. It's surely not going to work. Sergio Sabrino switches lanes, but it is going to be a super executed move from Liam Stevens, who's in 5th, Rishan Jacobs in 3rd, and trying to fight back still is Lorenz Patton. Sabrino's gone up, and they're still wheel to wheel in the battle for 3rd. They're basically very nearly making their way into the pit lane as well line, and it's Tomasetto, then Jacobs, then Sabrino. Sabrino's going to get the inside line, and he'll get through. Incredible dogfighting going on here in F2.
6 cars, all squabbling over positions, and it was Sabrino who was able to get past Stevens, and then Stevens has now just got himself back through. It is all kicking off here, and this is costing them dear time to Lorera and Hitala. Now Quintino retires from this race. That now means we have 8 cars out this evening, and Lorenz Patton will try and get back through on Sergio Sabrino. Further up, Liam Stevens might now try and attack onto Rishan Jacobs. Is he going to look for it into turn 4? We saw how confident he was on the brakes last lap around. He just is not close enough here on lap 24, but he's all over the back of the Aston Martin. Elliot Tomasetto on the podium, looking for his first podium of the season. At the front of the field it is Lorero versus Hitala. Stevens will need a miracle if he wants to try and pull this gap back down into his favour, but we know a driver like Stevens can do that. He just needs to pray that everybody around him stops squabbling and they all focus on the common objective. Try and catch back up to that top 2, but here he comes onto Rishan Jacobs. He's being squeezed to the inside, really being shown that tighter, narrow line for the Niki Lauda curve. He's forced the Aston Martin to go all the way over the curb, and this might invite Sergio Sabrino into the fight, and it certainly does. He's going to look to the inside of the Aston Martin, but here comes Jacobs around the outside of Stevens. He'll be forced wide. Here comes Sergio Sabrino to get the exit, to get the traction and the drive out the corner, but just is not able to draw alongside. Straight line mode active. Boost will be inactive for all of these drivers, as here comes Jacobs to the inside of Stevens once more. More rubbing between the pair, and surely Stevens is going to pull this one off as he's on the inside for turn 6, and he does find his way back through, and he's up now into 4th place is Liam Stevens, with Rishan Jacobs now with a feisty Sergio Sabrino all over the back of him. Stevens will now focus his attention on Elliot Tomasetto in front of him, while the Aston Martin has mirrors full of the Red Bull, who look for a move through the penultimate corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we know how Madrid was. That only had 3 retirements. We've got a long list, and a long list that's not over. In towards turn 1. There we go with Sergio Sabrino, having a look at this stage. Just making sure he's large in the mirrors, trying to compromise his rival's line. That could leave him vulnerable as well to Lorenz Patton. So there's multiple things you're having to try and contend with, because you can easily get a car coming up the inside at basically any moment. And we get back to another overtaking chance at turn number 4. The drivers make their way towards now. So the top 2 are quite clear. Here is where the fighting is at the moment. This is where the scrapping is at the moment in time. And you've got different battery levels at different parts of the circuit. Massive closing speed. And that's Sabrino, who basically very nearly made it 4 wide. And it's Jacobs ahead, Tomasetto ahead, Stevens roaring around the outside. There goes Lorenz Patton to try and fight his way by. And he'll get the inside line down towards the final 2 corners on this lap of the race. And he'll fight his way by, kept his foot in, and gets his reward a few corners on.
That was great racing, as Elliot Tomasetto's now picked up a 3-second time penalty. That could certainly rule him out of podium contention, unless, with all this squabbling that's going on, everyone around him is on those 2 track limit warnings. Of course, if you get a 3rd, it is a 3-second time penalty to your name. And around the Red Bull ring, I was expecting a few more from these drivers, especially with the mistakes we saw in qualifying, the amount of invalidations that were picked up in qualifying. But they've been very well behaved when it comes to the track limits. Only 2 drivers have picked them up this evening, that being Van Selter and now Elliot Tomasetto, who may have just took himself even out of top 6 contention at this stage. But on lap 27 of 36, 10 to go here at the Red Bull Ring. It is Alejandro Lerrero that still leads the way from Tony Hietala. Those two are probably just building for a final lap battle. And Liam Stephens will lead the charge of cars behind him all the way down to Sabrino in 7th to try and pull himself back into race-winning contention. But this is exactly what Tony Hietala needs here, Omi. It may not be a lot of points. It may only be a couple. But still, as it currently stands, it is points back in that championship fight against Liam Stephens. And it is certainly what he just needs to keep doing for the remainder of the season. It don't matter how many points, just keep chipping away and that gap will certainly reduce.
Absolutely. I mean, if he keeps doing it, eventually we'll have a proper championship battle come down to the final race of the season, and he'll very much be a contender, and you just don't know when will be that week where Liam Stephens gets into a bit of misfortune. And when you have battling like this that goes on, it really could be at any moment. And that could be the momentum breaker. So if Hietala can find some momentum, that can be so important. Because he had a campaign where he lost the championship due to things going wrong. And then he had a championship where we saw that happen to some of his rivals. And a year on, that experience of battling for the championship and losing very much made him a better contender in season 42. So he's been 2 times now a contender for the championship at this level. He's won it, of course, once. Now he's trying to become a 2-time PCF2 champion and trying to go back-to-back as well. And he's, of course, doing that because he wants to also prove himself when it comes to this regulation set. Because everything kind of gets reset. And this is the moment that you need to perform when it comes to F2. It's the best season to do so.
Certainly is. Indeed, this is the season where you need to make things work. It is the opportunity, as Abe Gabadi now has left the session, it's an opportunity to prove that you are one of the quickest drivers on this game outside of the F1 esports scene. And for Liam Stephens, he's brought that gap down now to 2.6 seconds. So it is closing between that top 2 and Liam Stephens. The V-Carb is certainly hustling. He is pushing to the absolute limits as Rishan Jacobs has fallen a second away from Elia Tomasetto. So that means it's now a duo of drivers. First and second, third and fourth slowly going to converge onto one another with Rishan Jacobs leading a trio of himself, Patton and Sabrino. But Jacobs has lost a lot of time over this lap. Is he starting to struggle maybe for tyres or even for battery? Trying to keep up with Elia Tomasetto as here comes Sabrino to the inside at turn 1 onto Patton, and he's just not able to squeeze his way through. He tried using the battery, tried using the overspeed. It did not work. Tomasetto nearly out of a second from Liam Stephens, who on this last tour alone has found about a second onto Tony Hietala in front. The V-Carb driver has seen his championship rival in front of him, and he is not letting himself go down without a fight, and he wants to extend this championship lead even further. It may only be the midpoint of the season, but still the championship can be won or lost in races like this, and he certainly is starting to demonstrate a true champion's mentality as Stephens, as Jacobs holds on against Patton, who is putting him under all sorts of pressure. And I believe Jacobs must have a severe issue here with, it's with the front wing damage. It's started to bite, I think, the front wing damage here, Omi, because he is really starting to struggle with that front end.
Didn't really notice it. Combine that with battery, combine that with tyres that are not at peak performance anymore. It all begins to add up and doesn't deliver you with the best performance. Battery is such a key thing here at the Red Bull Ring. And there you can see once again Patton looking for it. Sabrina's going to get close as well. This is going to get very tasty then. Down towards the third turn off the circuit. And the Williams getting closer and closer. Does Lorenz Patton go for the move? The answer is no at this stage. Sergio Sabrino also sits in behind, and now they're going to try and deploy some of the battery to try and fight their way through. But yes, through the corners, it's where Jacobs is losing time. So you ideally want to try and be by, but they're also having to battery manage themselves because they know that if they use it all up now, then they'll pay the price too.
Certainly will do indeed. And for Stevens' upturn of performance, is that just due to that 3 to 4 lap tyre difference he has over the rest of the field, the rest of the drivers around him? As they've hit the cliff, he hasn't done that just yet. 1.5 seconds is now that gap between Hitala and Liam Stevens. And all this squabbling here with this trio just behind Roshan Jacobs is in fighting another trio of cars behind them. Laurie Tilke, Jensen Rowson and Dirk Vermond are now slowly starting to enter the equation. And we could now have 6 cars in a scrap as there's Sabrino to the inside at turn 1. It was a late lunge and he's pulled it off perfectly. Brilliantly executed by the Red Bull driver, who chucks a lunge to the inside, caught Patton napping, and he moves up to 6th place. He's now next to try and attack onto Roshan Jacobs, but here comes the Alpine of Laurie Tilke, the Haas of Rowson, the Mercedes of Vermont, and at the front of the field as well, Stevens now within overtake mode range. So he is now within a second of Tony Hitala and Alejandro Herrero. He's had to work, he's had to hustle to close that 3-second gap down, but he has done it, and what a drive it could be if he can pull this one off. But when we cross the line, we'll have 4 more racing laps to go. We are entering crunch time here at Spielberg, and at the moment it is Herrero who has done since the very beginning, led this race, but still plenty to play for up and down throughout the field for any of these point-paying positions.
Absolutely. Well, it's just Liam Stevens things, isn't it? To find yourself as a contender. And now let's see whether he can make an impact, because he's closed in, but how does he manage things now at the front? So 3-way fight for the win. Elliot Tomasetto has a penalty. Roshan Jacobs is battling. Well, these drivers still could lose time if they continue scrapping away. Does Sergio Sabino get the chance? He's placing the car on that wider line also. There goes Laurie Tilke the long way round, and he creates some room for himself and basically enters himself into contention in this battle. He saw them all congest up down towards the braking zone, and he's trying to make a move of himself. That's going to be close to the back of the Red Bull car there. Does Tilke get by? Watch Sabrino as well, trying to stand on the power. Does the battery work for him? Can he turn it to the inside line? The answer is no, he backs out of it, but they're still going wheel to wheel, Tilke and Patton, and it is going to be Tilke who finally gets up. Now it's going to be Rowson trying to attack the driver of Patton, who could be about to lose another position, and they're about to go side by side down towards our camera at turn 9.
Yes, certainly is Roshan Jacobs holding on for dear life, as at the front of the field, Stevens has got past Tony Hitala. So, the V-Carb driver is now up into 2nd place, and Hitala has just seen his championship rival overtake him. Sabrino has got through into turn 1 once again, catching another driver napping here at turn number 1, and he's now going to be under all sorts of pressure from Jacobs, and maybe even Laurie Tilke as well as we make that run up into turn 3. It may be Jacobs to hold it around the outside, but he gets forced wide, and this gives Tilke the greatest opportunity to get underneath him and to the inside, but he's not able to find the move either, as we now run down to the Swash Gold. 3 to go here in Austria, as to the inside goes Jacobs. There's contact with Sabrino. We're 3 wide on the exit. We're squeezing through turn 5. The Alpine driver trying to swing it around the outside. He gets the up and under on the Aston Martin. Can he potentially get it on the Red Bull? No, not just yet, but he's up into 6th place. He looked for the lunge. He got the drive out of the exit of 5, was smart about things into 6, and now as we head into turn 9, here comes Jacobs throwing it back down the inside, just not able to get things through, and you could throw a blanket over all 5 of these cars as they're squabbling all the way up into turn 1 once again. It's nose to tail stuff, as now here comes Rowson onto Roshan Jacobs. He can't get the move done yet either, but he certainly has an opportunity up into turn 3.
He very much does. On board with the driver, looking for the move, being squeezed all the time, but fighting his way by in the braking zone. But he's got to be careful because there's cars up ahead, and he had to consider that with how late on the brakes he went. And now we're going to go side by side once again. So Jacobs is going to get the inside line. Backing out of it is going to be Rowson. If he continues to get squeezed in that way, he might need to at this point. He's still risking it. Oh, he's going to get shown over the curb and in towards the gravel trap. But that is going to bring into play Dirk Vermond as well, who sends it down the inside. Our pole sitter from Madrid is making the move now, and he's going to get the inside line once again for the next corner. He's getting very close to the back of that Aston Martin car of Jacobs, who is very much seeing a great race basically being taken away from him at this stage, and it is absolute pure chaos at the moment in this battle. But at the front of the field, what's going to happen here between Stevens, who's going to get a great chance? He has fought his way into contention. He got past Tony Hietala, and now he's looking for the lead down towards turn number 3. Is Stevens going to make the move on the Alpine? Can he be late on the brakes? He tries to sell the dummy, and he's taking a wide line now up against Loureiro. He will boot the throttle right about now and will chase down the Alpine driver. Does he have the battery? Does he have the momentum? It's a last lap fight. He's trying to go tight to the inside line. Switch is late, goes the long way round, under braking. He basically bangs wheel with the Alpine, but it is Loureiro ahead down towards turn number 6 now. Stevens is running out of chances. He's running out of options. He won't be able to go the long way round there, and now he's going to get the inside line, possibly down towards turn number 8. It's still not working out in his favour, and Loureiro is doing enough, but there's one chance still remaining. Does he have the battery? Down towards turn number 9. No, he can't do it. He can't do it at this stage. And it's Loureiro through the final corner. And he is going to take a first victory in F2. An incredible race is resolved in the favour of the Alpine man.
Brilliant defensive driving there on the final lap from Alejandro Loureiro. Knew exactly where to place his car against the championship leader, with the pressure of the championship leader breathing down your neck. You think he may have crumbled in the first opportunity he's really had at taking a race victory here in PCF2. He has snatched it with both hands, and Alejandro Loureiro take a bow for that defense on the final lap. He came under so much pressure from Liam Stevens, who was trying every which way to find his way through, but it was not enough to dispose the run, to dispose the Alpine of Alejandro Loureiro. It was Talkie last week, it's Loureiro this week, who both take their first victories of the season. It was Talkie's second in F2, it's Loureiro's first here in the division, and it's a brilliant job from the Spaniard, who takes a very, very strong performance out of today. Pole position into the race victory, with Liam Stevens in second, who still scores some crucial championship points over championship rival Tony Hietala, who finishes in third. There's Elia Tomasetto, who even with that 3-second time penalty was able to pull out the gap to finish in fourth. Sabrino, Tulki, Rowson, Patton, Jacobs ends up in ninth in the end. Then Vermont, Kokeni, Flack, Santana and Roberts. Your DNFs were Quintino, Prezican, Gabadi, Alves, Bohm, Fanselter, Dowds and Stachulek to round out the field. But Omi, what a race that was. What an ending that was. As I'm quickly just asking the top 3 if they want to come in for interviews. That was just an amazing finale there, Omi.
It was. I thought Stevens would have had the chance. Just the pace that he had to close in, then in the way that he got past Tony Hietala, we weren't setting up the move. It just happened. We were focusing elsewhere. You cut to it at turn 1 when he sailed the long way round. It just looked like he was in a different league. He didn't go for the move on the penultimate lap. That's, of course, because he wanted to set it up on the final lap, which is why you think that most likely he would be able to get on by. He was once again setting it up on that final lap during the duration of it. He was once again placing the car in specific lines to try and get the cut back. He had an overspeed right at the end of straights and into corners. It was absolutely fantastic, but just could not make the maneuver. It was simple as that, and that is going to be special for Alejandro Loureiro. A deserved performance being rewarded in the end.
Yeah, it certainly was a very deserved performance there from Loureiro. Was able to hold on brilliantly, and it was just all down to him parking his car in the correct places in that defence. Of course, it was the overtake mode that Stevens did have. He did have the extra battery to hand, but Loureiro placed his car absolutely perfectly, and it worked completely in his favour, and he was able to hold on to take a maiden victory. But we do have one of the top 3 in the waiting room ready to come in for an interview, and that is going to be third place man Tony Hietala. So let's bring him in for a word on his Austrian Grand Prix. Hello Tony, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the podium. Great way to really come back from your own breaks. Of course, you weren't here last week. Just talk us through things. How did you find that?
Well, first of all, don't really have that much time to practice now. Just started high school, so can only do like 1 or 2 hours per day max. Quali pace wasn't ideal. P12 is only 10.5 off, so it's not that bad. And then the race was like a 2-second undercut. I just went 1 lap earlier, and then everyone else went. It was a good race pace, I think. And then I just had to save the tires a lot so I don't get a puncture at the end.
It certainly was great race pace from yourself. Was you expecting, talking about that undercut, was you expecting it to be so powerful, or was you expecting to come out at just only a few places further up, not in the net race lead, essentially?
Well, yeah, I knew, but it depends on. Well, yeah, I knew.
Well, it certainly worked out in your favour. And in those final few laps, when it was just you and Alejandro at the front of the field, was you expecting Stevens to close in with that tyre deficit, or was you in a sense of, we've got a big enough buffer to hold off here, or did you think it was inevitable he was going to catch up?
And I think, of course, he was gonna catch. He had like, I don't know, 4 laps maybe on me. That's even 1 lap is like a pretty big offset on this track. So it was like, of course, it was flying as well, but with the tires as well, he was easily gonna catch before the end at least.
Certainly did fly up to the back of the pair of you, but of course P3 as well. I mean, Stevens has extended that gap a little bit in the championship, but of course still a long way to go. Are you still confident you can bring that gap back down, or with the limited practice it's going to be a bit more of a struggle?
Well, just not really thinking about championship at the moment. Just enjoying it and maximizing what I can do in the races. Yeah.
Hopefully you can have a strong rest of the season. And talk about the rest of the season, last question from us here, Tony. We head to Imola next time out. First of all, will you be racing? And second of all, are you confident around Imola in these cars, or have you not really done much of it yet?
Yeah, pretty sure I'll race, and I don't think I've done Imola in like 2 years, so we'll see. Probably gonna be decent, but we'll see.
Certainly shall indeed. So, well, thank you for joining us, Tony, and yeah, congratulations on the P3. Congratulations.
Yeah, cheers.
That was Tony Hietala, ladies and gentlemen. The only driver seems we're going to get in for an interview. So, yeah, Omi, of course, Imola next time out. I'll run everyone through the calendar in a few moments' time, but a circuit where it's not on, well, at the moment, not on the real-life F1 calendar. So this will be a lot of our first taste of seeing these regulations around the Imola circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a rumor for real life, maybe later on in the campaign, but we haven't seen it. And of course, we'll go racing next week. So whatever happens at the end of the real life season, we'll definitely be the first ones to have a go at it. Yeah, it's one of those circuits where, you know, it's not pass every single second like we possibly got today. You've got to balance the risk versus reward. It is that type of challenging circuit. Qualifying's always going to be epic. Last time we went racing, of course, for F2 around it, quite a chaotic race. We had a lot of battling, a lot of fighting in the wet conditions. We had a lap 1 pile-up first of all, and then we had right in the final stages, the top 2 drive themselves off the circuit straight in towards the gravel right before the Villeneuve chicane. So it was quite a feisty show last time for F2. Don't know whether we're going to be able to match it, but considering the season that we have, considering the regs that we have, everything does lead to quite a chaotic race.
Certainly does indeed, and Imola should be very, very entertaining indeed. And to quickly bring you an update on the provisional standings, after that result, Stevens now has a 28-point lead over Tony Hietala. He gained 2 points in that race over his championship rival. 28 points will be the gap heading into next week. But that is, of course, provisional before stewards' inquiries. I don't believe either driver were involved in a scruffle, but still, they are provisional results. So, quickly, to take you through the calendar before we head off, of course, we head to Imola next time out. on the 27th before a trip to Vegas, Mexico, Brazil, Bahrain and Texas to round off the season. We really have hit that halfway point of the season. Next week really is the last opportunity you do have in an 11-round calendar to get your championship campaign underway, and we certainly shall see if Stevens can carry on that 100% podium streak. Of course, that pattern of first, third has come to an end, where of course Loureiro took that race victory. Next time out in Imola, he certainly can return to that top spot. But that's going to be all from us here, so make sure you tune in next week, 8 PM UK time, 9 PM European time, for a trip over to Italy. It will be round number 6 of the season. Thank you ever so much for watching. Stevens carries on his championship charge. He carries on the streak. Will it be broken, or will he extend that 100% podium tally next time out? Stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you in Italy. Thank you, and bye-bye.